оценивать?
Журить будешь?
Конечно.
А як, змобілити, що?
Ну, во-первых, я
Во-первых,
веду
я.
запись. Во-вторых, я потом пересматриваю запись вообще целиком, потому что здесь все равно. Я сразу не оценивать буду. Ну, знаешь, сидишь несерьезно, все равно что-то взрыв сообщений в канале. Ну, насрать. Я не знаю, ты как в курсе нашей повестки. Ну что по поводу кто хочет десятки? Это, ну, если на английском скажу, раз, раз, раз.
One, two. Hi, guys. Hello, everyone. Today we will continue our final presentation of students the Rollin Scope School. Okay. Woo! And before we will start, I want to give you some small advice. Guys, please don't worry. Just relax and try to enjoy it. Okay, let's start and applause to our first speaker.
Hi, my name is Erika, and today I'm going to talk about open source. The first time I faced such phenomenon as open source was sorry. I'm quite nervous. The first time I was faced with such a phenomenon as open source was associated with, however trite it may sound, Linux. I was choosing an operating system, and one of my friends recommended me to install Ubuntu. The last version at that time was Hardy Heron. Before this acquaintance, I used to think that there are only two things when you talk about software. Or you buy it, or you use a pirate copy. So I was very surprised when my friend told me that this system is free, and they even sent him a physical CD when he asked them. So I googled it, and that was like, wow. I even thought that it's too good to be true. They had an about section on a prominent place of their website where they said about the significance of what did just happen? When they told about the meaning of the word Ubuntu, the humanity to others, and even their logo was a symbolic image of people holding hands. These dots are their heads, and this is hands holding. They said about their mission, it included to deliver free software to everybody freely on the same terms. I thought that it was like a fairy tale, but in reality, where all lived ever happily. So, is truly in open source all is so good? Let's try to figure it out. Let's start with a little bit of history. It may sound paradoxically, but open source owes its start to a monopoly. The AT&T company, which was founded in far and bearded 1880 by Alexander Graham Bell, held a monopoly on phone service in United States and Canada throughout almost all 20th century. That means they had a huge budget, and part of this budget was spent on innovation technologies. One of their technologies was Unix, which they, accordingly to law, had to provide to universities for use. Still, they had copyright, and that led to that led in 1980s to genesis of two currents. Berkeley University began rewriting Unix, and that ended in their Berkeley system development, also known as BSD. And Richard Stallman has started his project GNU, which recursively stands for GNU is not Unix. And with this project started, the free software movement began. The free software term refers to freedom of modification and exchange of software, and does not refer to any monetary freedom. And in 1991, and famous at that time student Linus Torvalds presented his project, operating system kernel Linux. The system kernel Linux was conceived and created for his personal computer and with no cross-platform intents, but has since expanded to support a huge amount of computer architectures. And after release in September, Linux rapidly attracted developers and users who adopted it as the kernel for their own other open source project, notably the GNU operating system, which Union ended in the system which we all know now as Linux. The open source movement branched from their free software movement. And then in 1998, Bruce Perens and Eric Raymond founded an organization called Open Source Initiative as an educational, advocacy, and stewardship organization at a cusp moment in the history of the culture. That was the beginning of open source, and based on the facts, we can say that it originated from a monopoly, and its main idea was to oppose it and to provide equality to all participants. Advocacy was then and now remains one of essential things because the open source movement has faced a number of legal challenges. There are many open source licenses now, and here on this slide I have a simple scheme to choose one according to what you want. And every one of them has its own advantages and disadvantages. Even WTFPL, which as we see stands aside with a note whatever, this is its text. It's pretty simple, huh? But even WTFPL is not so simple in legal sense as it may seem. As you see, it allows everything, and it may lead to the situation when the company using your code under the WTFPL may sue you for publication of this code, which they used in their proprietary project. And it's not obvious how it will be interpreted by the judge. So every license has its own pitfalls. Since I myself am a woman, I cannot ignore the theme of gender diversity, especially when it's so much told about equality. In a study for European Union in 2002, researchers found that only 1.5% contributors in open source are female. Also, women are generally underrepresented in programming. In tech professions, their amount are much higher, close to 25%. Though these data is pretty rusty, this makes suggest that female programmers are overall less likely than male to contribute in open source projects. That's not very good for common cause because a study in 2015 found that open source teams with more equal divide on gender tended to be more highly productive. A central vision in open source is that because the software is built and maintained on the merit of individual code contributions, open source communities should act as a meritocracy. In a meritocracy, the importance of an individual in the community depends on the merit individual contribution and not demographic conditions such as age, race, or gender. Thus, proposing changes to the community based on gender, for example, to make the community more inviting towards females, goes against ideals of meritocracy by targeting certain programmer by a gender and not based on their skill alone. Though there is evidence that gender does impact a programmer's perceived merit in the community. In a 2016 study, identified the gender of over 1 million programmers on GitHub by linking the GitHub account to their other social media accounts. And between male and female programmers, they found that female programmers actually were more likely to have their pull requests accepted into the projects, though only when they had a gender-neutral account. If a female had an account which had name or image which could identify her as a woman, they were less likely than men to get accepted their pull request. But even these problems, in my opinion, are not the saddest thing when we're talking about the problems in open source. The most sad thing is the fact that open source has failed. The creation of open source movement has created a degree of global computing access which which have been unthinkable in a world when proprietary is the only option. To say that open source contributed in the world's innovations is to be very underestimating. Better to say that world's innovation owe their existence to the rise of open source. So in this presentation, when I say about the fail, I don't mean any technical I don't mean any technical thing, and further, I mean the lack of social ones. Consider the cases of these companies forming what we now call the big tech: Amazon, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft. We'll address the first three, leaving Microsoft away because it's a special case. And so what do the first three have in common? They all build their entire business on open source software, and they tend to pay very little in license fees to software vendors. That's their secret. They all applied the lesson very quickly on the way you build your profitable business is to start a foundation of open source software, hire a team of smart engineers, and build your way to glory. And that's precisely what all of them have done. So what you may ask, does this have to do with redistributing wealth and power upwards? In each case, where did it go? Okay. In each case, they created businesses that make vast sums of money. There are tightly constrained vast sums of money. Sorry. There are tiny constrained groups of employees who benefit, and they tend not to pay others for software. The money comes in, but it never leaves. This means that highly paid professionals of these companies and their management receive the 10% receive the lion's share of money, forming a 10% earners, leaving everyone beyond. Before open source proliferation, when the companies usually had to pay for every line of software, that income was at least distributed through many parts of economy. So it's resulted with less concentration of wealth. Think about that. The most successful way to amass ridiculous sums of money and keep it to yourself is to build your business on open source software. To be an open source proponent today at this time, without acknowledging this very real and most unfortunate consequence, is to be a cog in a much larger machine, a puppet, a very useful idiot. If the final solution of these problems exists, I don't know. The rise of open source is inseparably linked with the rise of inequality and the excesses of modern capitalism. And if we're able to solve this problem in terms of open source sustainability, We will have provided a blueprint for solving capitalism inequality crisis and saving society itself. Anyway, open source may have been a part of a problem, but it should absolutely be a part of a solution. In a 2016 survey from Black Duck, 96% of software products used developed that year used open source software. That number is likely higher now. One could claim without any overstatement that our world would not exist without open source, or that it runs on open source software. I don't know how to calculate the total value of open source software of to the world, but I do know that if open source software immediately, suddenly went away, the results would be catastrophic, an existential crisis for humanity. So if we think about software future, most believable it would be open source software. And though still much should be done, I believe that this is not the worst option, because we are the ones who evolve it, and it's up to us how and which way it will evolve. Thank you, and may the source be with you.
Hello. My presentation is Canvas. Today I will tell you about the Canvas element, what it is for, what is give to a developer, and to use what do you need and what you don't need to display it properly, what you should do to make it work. Also, we will have some fun with different methods, and in the end, please be ready for something exciting. Canvas application programming interface is one of the most popular features in HTML5. Developers like to use it for creating rich web applications, and the user may use those applications without using browser plugins like Adobe Flash Player. Most of the modern browsers support it. In a moment we will see what Canvas is capable of, how you might use it. Officially, a canvas is a resolution-dependent bitmap canvas which can be used to draw graphs, game graphic, animation, or other visual images on the fly. Among other things, it can be used for real-time video processing. Simply saying, with the help of JavaScript and HTML5 canvas element, you may draw 2D shapes and bitmap images. A web page may contain multiple canvas elements. Each canvas may have an ID using which you may target a specific canvas through JavaScript. Each canvas element has to-do context. This again has object, properties, and method. Using those, you may draw your stuff. To draw on a canvas, you need to refer the context of the canvas. The context gives you access to the to-do properties and methods that we'll dive deep into later. Simple method. Begin path. Created a new path. Once created, future drawing commands are directed into the path and use it to build the path up. Close path. Adds a straight line to the path doing to the start of the current subpath. Driving lines. Method line two parameters. X axis coordinate of the line's endpoint, y axis coordinate of the line endpoint. HTML code for driving canvas ID canvas. Next JavaScript code initialization canvas. Next command begin path, start a new path. Next command move to, move the pen. Next line to, draw a line, and next render the path. And browser view, draw line, draw rectangle, method rect, 4 parameters, x, y, width, height, x axis coordinate of the rectangle starting point, y axis coordinate of the rectangle starting point, the rectangle width, positive value are to the right and negative to the left. The rectangle height, position value are down and negative are up. Initialization canvas for HTML. Next, use rect method of 4 parameter 50, 50, 175. Browser view, rectangle. Driving cycle, method arc, 6 parameter, x, y radius, start angle, and angle anti-clockwise. X axis coordinate of the arc center, y axis coordinate of the arc center, the angle at which the arc starts, measure clockwise from the positive x axis and express it in radians. The angle at which the arc starts, measure it clockwise from the positive x axis and express it in radians. The angle at which the arc ends, measure it clockwise from the positive axis and express it in radians. An optional boolean which is true causes the arc to the draw counted clockwise between the start and end angle. The default value is full clockwise. This standard code for cycle and browser view. Simple quiz. This price 1 chocolate. What will you see in the browser? Only 2 line purple. Yes.
Because of begin path, you should end the path.
Okay. Thank you. Hey, help, please. Simple quiz to what will you see in the browser? If you can always smile at life, life will always smile at you. Thank you. Good luck.
So, hey everyone. uh, I don't think that this thing is really necessary. You all can hear me, right? Oh, yeah, it's translation. All right, then I'll have to speak into the mic. My name is Vadim, and today we're going to be talking about TypeScript, which is basically JS with static typing. But let's start with the beginning. There, here, over there. Oh, oh. And the first question is, what is TypeScript? So it is basically a strict syntactic superset over JavaScript, which adds optional static typing to the language. As we all know, JavaScript does not have static typing, and TypeScript adds this option to JavaScript. And we're going to find out why and for what reason. So, TypeScript is developed by Microsoft and supported too. But it's an open source project. And so, uh, let's talk about how does it work. You cannot run TypeScript in browser or anywhere else, but you can compile your TypeScript to plain JavaScript, and then you can run it anywhere. More than that, TypeScript can use some modern JavaScript ES5 features like classes, async functions, and still be compiled into older versions of JavaScript like ES3, which is pretty convenient, so you'll be able to run your code anywhere. But what's the point of strict typing? There are enough limitations in our life, and JavaScript doesn't have this static typing. Why do we need it? The answer is quite simple. I really like this post on Reddit, which says, would you rather have silly errors during development or insanity-inducing errors in production? What it means is that your compiler, which compiles TypeScript to JavaScript, uh, checks your code every time it compiles. And if you make some errors, if you assign incompatible types, it will alert you about this, and you will be able to avoid a ton of mistakes. So let's show how it works. Let's start with variable typing. For example, if I define a variable, Lucky, and assign it a number 23, then its type will be set as a number, and I will not be able to assign a string to it. So we can see it's underlined, and this code will not compile. Also, I can manually set the type of some variable. So for example, it's Lucky, and it say that it should be number, and I can assign it a number value, but I cannot assign string. As I've already mentioned, static typing in JavaScript is optional. So what it means, you can disable the static typing by adding type any. Now we can assign any value to our variable. Also, you'll be able to create your own custom types with TypeScript. For example, you create your own type style, which can be bold or italic, and then you'll be able to assign only bold or italic to the variable of such type. And it can be not only strings, it can be anything like bold, italic, 23, and it is actually really convenient and helps to avoid lots of mistakes. You can also create your custom object types interfaces. For example, here we see an interface person, which has a first and last name. So we can only create the objects which have a type of person by this template. We cannot add anything else or make other fields there. But also you can then write such thing as we said that key should be string and type should be any. Then we can also add some other values, but first and last name should be here. Let's talk a little bit about function typing. You can set the type of your arguments, and you also can set a type of a returning value. So this function returns an x and a power of y, and x and y should be numbers, of course. And in this case, it should return a string, so this won't compile, this won't work. So to fix this, we can use number prototype to string, and now the code is valid and everything's fine. We can also use functions of type void. You maybe saw this in some other languages. So these are functions which do not return any value. A little bit about array typing. We can create an array of numbers this way. So we set the array type as number, and here's an array sign. So it can be only numbers, but not anything else. Also, TypeScript allows us to create such data types as tuples. So this is basically an array, but it should have predefined number, a predefined types of elements. So it should be 3 elements, and they should be only number, string, and boolean. This is also can be convenient in some cases. Let's talk a bit about interfaces again. Let's now talk about generics. Generics are used in several strict types programming languages. For example, you can see similar stuff in C++, but it's called templates. Basically, what is generics? You can this thing helps you to reuse your code. For example, you can make a class and then create an observative T. So you can later define what type this T should be. So when you create an exemplar, you can write it should be number or person or something else. What is TypeScript used for? Pretty much everything. It's very popular with AngularJS, Ionic, NativeScript, Dojo, Epic, and as I've already said, it compiles to plain JavaScript and can be used anywhere, and it might improve your efficiency and decrease the amount of bugs in your code. So in conclusion, TypeScript is a pretty convenient language, and it adds C#, I should say, experience to JavaScript, helps you to avoid lots of mistakes, and can be a really good friend of any front-end developer. Thank you for attention.
Это Игорь.
Оп. А каким образом ее нету? Стопэ. Да, ребятки, что-то вы накосячили. Сейчас ссылочку просто сброшу тогда. Ну, подожди. Что там у меня на телефоне? Сейчас не знаю.
Раз, вот, все, работает. Hi, my name is Anna, and today I'm going to tell you about React. And let's start with React definition. What is it, React? React is an open source JavaScript library which used for building user interfaces, specifically for a single page application. And several facts about React. First, React was created by Jordan Wolke, a software engineer working for Facebook in 2011. The latest version of React is 16.8. It was released to the public on 16th of February 2019. And a lot of companies using React, and you can see only some of them on the slide. Okay, what can attract us in React? Of course, it's the features. And the first, JavaScript extension, or more commonly JSX, is a React extension that allows us to write JavaScript look like HTML. The next feature is components. React application is made up of multiple components, and each component has its own logic and controls. These components can be reusable and help you to maintain code when you work on large-scale projects. The next features one-way data binding. React helps us to update the view for users with Flux and controls the application workflow. Flux is an architectural pattern. Architectural patterns enforces the unidirectional data flow. It controls drift data and enables communications between multiple components using of central store, which have authority for all data. And the next features is Virtual DOM. Virtual DOM is a lightweight JavaScript object. It's just a copy of real DOM, and Virtual DOM works in 3 simple steps. First step, whenever any underlying data changes, the entire UI is rendered in Virtual DOM representation. The second step between the difference between the previous DOM representation and the new one is calculated, and the last step, once the calculations are done, the real DOM will be updated with one things that have actually changed. And based on the features listed above, we get 2 more benefits. Simplicity, declarative view make your code more readable and easy to debug. And the last, performance. Performance using Virtual DOM objects enables fast batch updates with great productivity gains over frequent cascading updates of DOM 3. So at the same time, React has disadvantages too. And first, React technologies updates and accelerates so fast that there is no time to make proper documentation. The next, the higher pace of development. Due to the first disadvantages, you always need to update your skills and learn new ways of doing something. The next, view-friendliness. React covers only the UI layer, so you still need to choose some other new technologies and to complete a tooling set for development in the project. And the last one, no support for all the browsers. And the next part of my presentation, I want to tell you more details about components because React is all about components. The first time when you install React, you get only one thing, a component and its APIs. What APIs you get when you install React? There are 5, and they are render, step, props, context, lifecycle events. And render is a method for updating UI. Props provide a way of passing data down from one component to another, typically from parent component to child component. States. States are objects which determine components rendering and behavior, and they are mutable unlike the props and create dynamic component. Context. Context provide a way to pass data throughout the application tree, throughout the component tree, without having to pass props down manually at every level. And lifecycle events. Life cycle of a component can be determined as a series of methods. They are invoked in a different stage of component exciting, and component go throughout 4 stages: initialization, mounting, updation, and unmounting. And React has 2 different types of component, stateful and stateless. Stateful components initialize stateful APIs, render state, lifecycle events, while stateless component use render, props, and context. And React also has interesting thing like component patterns. Component patterns are use best practice and were introduced the first to split logic layer and presentational layer. Common component pattern R5, container, presentational, higher order components, and render callbacks. And they say only a few words about each one. Container. Container are your logic layer and data and utilize stateful APIs. In render method components, where you compose your API, consisting of children presentational components, and in order to have access to all stateful API, a container must be a class component. And the next, presentational. Presentational patterns use stateless APIs, and presentational container provides the data and callbacks from props, and which only provided by its own container or parent component. And the next, higher order components. Higher order components is a functional that takes component as an argument and return new component. This is pattern are powerful because it enables to this enables to use to be used for using component logic. And the last one, render callbacks. Render callbacks is similar to HIOD components, and render callbacks are used to share or use components, component logic, and render callbacks provides the luxury of reducing namespace collision and better illustrate where exactly the logic coming from. And now my presentation is final, and at final my presentation I want to share with you useful links, and if it's interesting for someone, you can find it on my GitHub repository, and I think it will be useful. Thank you for your attention. Oh? Oh, okay. Okay, I will try use React. If about yeah, I understand. I will try use React because while I read about React, I understand that it real powerful libraries which can get better my projects, and my project will be clearer maybe, and it make my work easier, I hope. I only try. I attach some functions, try to implement, for example, components, container components, functional components, something like that. But I didn't implementation in the project.
Hi, my name is Igor, and the topic is Mongo database. The little agenda about the topic. So I plan to describe why I need it, why developer might need it, why developer, and maybe let's start. Okay, MongoDB is NoSQL database and is document database. The main difference between them is that different structure, some parallels exist. For example, collections like tables, and documents it's like rows, but they all info saved in such JSON-like documents, and notation it's known for most of developers. I think that there are some beneficials of such databases, and the biggest of them is JSON. You all know JSON. You can collect possible work with it, and it's simple key-value pairs. You can save their other documents, arrays, simple some types, whatever. Unstructured data. Unstructured data, what is it? For example, you work with big data, and you can filter this data, and in usual SQL database it can be saved, because you need insert special type, and when you need inserted some type is not appropriate, you get an error. But in this case, the Mongo database eat it without problem. Agile sprints, the case is that with SQL you need to plan to architect your schema of the database in advance, and if you need to change something, that you need to rebuild the base. With NoSQL, especially with one database, it's not the case. It's easy on the go to change something, and it's good for Agile, for frequent sprints. Geo-distribution and scalability. What is it? Problem with usual SQL databases that they wasn't developed for scalability, horizontal scalability, because they work good in one server. But if you need to duplicate it in different servers, the problem, it don't communicate with they don't communicate each with between them. And you need to implement special software which connects them. It's expensive, it's difficult to maintain. Software, hardware must be high-end. And rescue from the NoSQL, it worked from the box. and Autosharding just you can divide collection on parts automatically on different machines. So data nesting is very convenient. Just imagine you have big pack of information which connected to one topic, and usually you, in normal old-fashioned or SQL database, you need to some filter it, piece information there, and difficult joins, and it's a bit of money consumption. But in case of NoSQL, you can put it in one document, and there may be nested document in one key, another document. So one place, it may be difficult to deal with, but it's on the stage of collecting data is convenient. Quick schema iteration, no downtime. As I said, with scripts, the problem is, or advantage of NoSQL is that you can iterate, change data scheme on the go. It's almost the same. And integrated caching, well, we know that caching it's very good, and you have this caching from the box. It's fast response. It's just cool. Cross-platform. I need to just highlight Docker. It's modern. It's cool and available for free. You have free 2 edition community server, Rask Software, and free trial of their SaaS service, cloud service, which named MongoDB Atlas. And and a little bit more, among that, I want to highlight idiomatic drivers. What is it? It's easier to work with this database because for each language, for most of the languages, they developed idiomatic drivers. You install it in your environment or on your server. And for example, where your Node.js working. At your Node.js, connect with database through these drivers, and you don't need to learn something else. Or you know C# or you know Java, it all works. And area of usage. Big data, content management, delivery, mobile. It's especially why big data, because you have big amount of information, you need to cut it on chunks, and it's easy if, as I said, it works from box, while data hubs, CDNS, for example, MongoDB S. It's sources. As I said, there are 2 sources, like in cloud-based SaaS service, MongoDB Atlas, Stitch, a smaller one, and community enterprise servers. But problem is that to work with the servers, no problem, but just what you need to know, you need special drivers. As I said, these idiomatic drivers. One of them is not driver, Mongo shell, it's special extension for JavaScript. Maybe it's not for production. It's maybe for just playing with JavaScript, playing with Mongo database, understand how it works. Because for working on real projects for Node.js, you need Node.js extension driver. Yes. And just what I said. Why I needed a little syntax, a little bit of syntaxes. So just imagine that we have installed this database, and you need to connect with this Mongo shell and connect with database. 3 cases: first you have it locally and non-default port. The last case is remote host. I think it's pretty straightforward. No explanations, and navigate to database. The agenda is to navigation, to querying, and deleting. Navigation, variable database, show current database. Use MyDB is just change some DB. You know name of DB, you type use the MyDB, and you switch the MyDB. And the last case is more interesting because creating new database, MyDB server can have different databases. You need to insert something inside because I guess it doesn't work with empty database. So you switch to new database, empty database, and populate it with my collection, create some collection. As I said, it's something like table in SQL database in that one, or many in that many, and it's ready. You have a new database. In that documents, just as I said before, just I showed before, in that one, in that many. The difference, you need to insert one document and many documents. It's all. And the query documents, it will be a little bit tricky, but also if spend a few minutes, it's pretty simple. You use function fund or property fund, and as parameter put the query. For example, you find first, you need to find some documents with key x equal to 1. Welcome. Next x in. It's some, you may read the help text about the lines and understand the meaning of these examples. X, where value is 1 or 2, for example, and is just a comma. Or for example, LT and less than. Then they changed operators like than, more than, just with letters. And the last one, we have or, and then we need to choose between different options. Or we choose the data collections, the documents with x equal to, or documents where y less than 3. I think it's. You can find presentation later and learn it if you're interested more. Update documents. First parameter, just search field. I need to find all documents where x equal 1, and then what I need to change. For example, in these documents, I need to change y to 2. That's all. And as optional parameter, a system able to change it automatically, as I know. But I the same novice in this topic like you. And better to say the system that parameters change it, and the system saves the time when it was changed. And delete documents the same as insert, but delete one, delete many. Simple. A little a mistake in the slide. That's only one document. And the useful link, if you want to learn more, please follow the link and find all the information here. And Node.js MongoDB driver. The last, not the least, as I said, on the production, you can't work just with Mongo shell, just trying. But you need to learn these idiomatic drivers. But what is the process of learning? You need first learn some frameworks like Angular, then learn Node.js, learn how to work with them without database, to how to store inside data. Only then learn this MongoDB, and this process is right. So, as I don't know Node.js, I decided not to provide any snippets with code because it's too time consumptive. For me, it might be lazy a bit. So I just provide a few links to this Node.js API. You can find all you need here. If you decided to dig down, dig deeper in the topic and learn more, or maybe in future, when you will be establish yourself like some middle developer, and decide to learn something of full stack. And it's all, but efficiently you lose nothing, because there was only few useful links and word thank you. It's all. Thank you.
Nice. Hello guys, my name is Vladislav. Let's talk about hash functions. So, what is it? I think many of you know that hash functions create unique digital fingerprint of data. It's often used for comparison purpose, for encryption, and like keys in data storages. But each application requires a suitable hash function. Let's talk about properties of these functions. So first is non-invertible. Hash function should be one-way function, which is easy to compute hash value with input, but it's very hard to get input with hash value. In cryptographic applications, hash functions are practically non-invertible. For example, you can store a secret key to get input with your hash value. Yeah, and for example, with passwords are often stored in data centers like hash values. So if you wanna get in, you need to type your password in login form. Then this password converted to hash value, and this hash is compared to a hash stored in data. Then you can go in. It's made because hackers can steal only a set of characters from databases, and they even doesn't have an opinion what is it, what value is it. So the next is determinism. It means that for given input, a value function must always generate the same hash value. We must not use random algorithm and external null variables. Just like what time is it, or what weather is it. So, but we have an example for Python language. Python language have his own implemented pseudo-random number generator algorithm that generates random numbers, but each number can be generated once. Next is uniformity. It means that two different inputs must not have the same hash value. Otherwise, we have a collision. For example, in hash tables, a single table cell with a hash key should store no more than one record. It means no collisions. Defined range, it means that output of hash function have a fixed or limited size. For example, SHA-1 hash function have a fixed size of 160-bit length. And another example, you can write a function that has output with limit of 32-bit integer value. And these values you can use as indexes of array to quicker search. So let's talk where it can be used. Checksums. When you download files from web, you need to be sure that file downloaded successfully without losses. And first you get hash value of whole file, and when downloading is over, you compare received hash with hash calculated with the received file. It's better to be quick, low memory cost, and when you check your checksums by eyes, it must be readable, like CRC32 hash function. So cryptography, Nothing to explain here, we just need to hide information. It requires collision resistance and must be non-invertible for some cases. In that way, thieves cannot steal your data. Security. It's used to store our private information or passwords in hash values. It requires collision resistance in some cases, like when you store private information, big amounts of documents, and when you store passwords, it must be non-invertible. But we have some cases when thieves can sort out your hash function if they get your hash function and make the hash table of it and just spend some time to fulfill all the values, hash values, and possible input values of these functions, and they even can get your passwords with this hash table. Not this. And last is hash tables. It's a very big topic, so I'll go over it briefly. It's used for quick search of data records, but by hash case. It needs to be quick and collision resistant, and that's all. So here you can see a popular hash functions. It's a table with name, length, and examples. For example, SHA-1 function used to create checksums for commits in Git. So, and why Git does it? It takes entire set of changes, runs it through algorithm, and in the end comes out with a hash string. Finally, we get an ID, this ID, to track all our commits with changes. Here we got 3 snapshots with information about changes, and then Git attached some meta information to them. So here you can see how series of those commits are linked together. We can see a parent property that refers to previous commit. And it helps us to understand how Git summarizes these snapshots and illustrates the data integrity that's built into Git. And most importantly, we're gonna be using these SHA-1 hash values to refer to the commits. Also, Bitcoin uses SHA-2 function to make hashes in blockchain system. And it's a very big topic, so you just need to know that it's also a hash functions. So that's all I want to tell you. Thanks for watching.
Why did you choose such a topic? It's more not practical, it's more about computer science.
Yeah, it's about computer science, but I think all of us starting to have a job here, and when you go to job to the first speaking, they all often take some questions about hash tables and hash values, and you need to know about this.
Greetings, my name is Andrew, and I'd like to tell you about machine learning. Okay, in preparation for this presentation, I tried to answer a few questions for myself. So, what is machine learning? How do we train machines? How is this method different from others? And how can we use machine learning in practice? So, look at these pictures. Can you determine age of these people? Or what is shown on these pictures, hot dog or not hot dog? These tasks are easier for carriers of natural intelligence, but it can be overwhelming for algorithms based on programmed set of rules. This is where machine learning comes to our rescue. Many people think that they can compare machine learning and neural networks, but this is not true. Machine learning is one of the areas of artificial intelligence. Neural networks, it's a part of machine learning, popular one, but there are others as well. The main principle of machine learning is that machines receive data and trains on it. So main tasks solved by machine learning are classification, regression, clustering, association, density recovery, revealing novelty, and building rank dependencies. Okay, let's use a simplified example to understand how machine learning is used in practice. Imagine that our company sells killer robots, and we also have a website where we take feedback from users. But we want to know what people think about us in social networks. First of all, we need a training data, training sample. Training sample, it's information on which our model will be trained. For this role, ideally suitable comments from our site. Each comment we denote as X, and user rating given to our product as Y. So let's take a look at two examples. First, thank you very much. This is exactly what I was looking for. The quality is excellent. My neighbor will no longer bother me. The only negative is that burns the floor of the area with my house too. This comment I think good for us, and user rating 4 stars. And another one, terrible quality. It does not understand my orders. I advise you to avoid this manufacturer. Thanks you for refund my money. This one is not good for us. User rating 2 stars. So it's time to develop our model. Our goal is to make the model which will be applied to comments and return close as much as possible result to product rating which user have left. It's hard to find formula to solve this problem, but we can simplify this task. Let's write bag of words. It's about 1,000 most important in our opinion words that can characterize our comment. For example, very, thank, excellent, avoid, terrible, and negative. Each word characterized by an array of 1,000 numbers. And then we need to find these numbers in our comments and summarize the received encodings. So for each comment now we have an array of 1,000 numbers. And each number in this array tell us how many times we met these words. For example, thanks, in first comment we met 1 times. Then we need to summarize, then we need to apply weights to our selectors and summarize them. For example, thanks and very going with plus, terrible, avoid, and terrible and negative going with minus. But how do we know? At the output of the model, we will get positive or negative number. The more this number, the more emotional comment was in the input of our model. But how do we know that weights of our words are correct? Why does the word thank have weight 4 rather than 5? For example, at the input of the model, we have a negative comment, and we expect model return 1 stars. But instead we get 3 stars. These 2 points error we call to loss, and we need to use a loss function. It helps us to determine how effective our model is. For example, this is popular loss functions, for example, mean squared loss, mean absolute loss, and others. Then we need to use a learning function to our model. Learning function should be based on the result of our loss function and change weights in our model. And that's all. There are many learning functions. I will not delve into the mathematical aspects because we don't have much time. But in general, the main goal of the learning function is to reduce the losses of the model. So training data comes into our model. then the result estimated by loss function, and then we apply learning function to improve our model. This cycle must be repeated until we obtain maximum accuracy of our model. This is a simplified example, but it shows how machine learning works. Okay, our training is over, and then we just need to apply our model to comments from social networks and find out what people think about us. So let's talk about types of machine learning. First is supervised learning. In the example above, we use this approach. We customize our model so its result matched with the result of the training data. Unsupervised learning. In this case, there is no right answer in the data. The main goal of the model is just to find any patterns, and that's all. Reinforcement learning. The machine learns through reward-based systems. Ensemble methods use several learning functions in order to obtain better prediction performance. And finally, neural networks and deep learning came into the world of programming straight from biology. So how does the machine learning differ from other methods? First, all the sequences are already contained in the data. We just need to train our model to see them. We can approximate complex dependencies and even models of system without having any idea how they work. And we can detect unexpected dependencies in the data. Application of machine learning: speech, handwriting and pattern recognition, technical and medical diagnostics, fraud and spam detection, selection of similar product or content for a user, and many, many others. If you're interested in this topic, I will leave you some useful links. That's all. Thanks for watching. Can you repeat, please? No. I understand. Okay. I think it's not. Yeah, I think it's not true because we need a training sample. So machines need to know how to kill people, for example. Yeah, and we need a training sample with many, many examples how machine kills people. So we need to find first kill. So machine can't just think, okay, I will go and kill this person for the first time. So, okay.
My name is Julia, and I'm going to tell you about TypeScript. TypeScript is a programming language which was developed by Microsoft. It has been created to tackle the development of large programs. TypeScript is free, open source, and superset of JavaScript. It was first launched for public use in October 2012. It was a result of 2 years of development at Microsoft with Anders Helsberg, the lead architect of C#. To get TypeScript compiler, we can use Node.js and install it as a usual Node.js package. Also, we can use different additional plugins for code editors. It's available, for example, VS Code, Atom, Vim, etc. TypeScript compiles into simple JavaScript code. It runs in any browser in Node.js and any JavaScript engine that supports ECMAScript 3 on UM. All features of TypeScript are absolutely optional. It means that you can take any working JavaScript project and gradually add TypeScript into it. TypeScript supports any latest and evolving JavaScript feature, for example, async functions and decorators. All features are available at development times, and after compiling, simple JavaScript code. On this slide, you can see example of little function greeter. After compile, our function will be like this, but we can change our target ECMAScript, for example, ECMAScript 6, and our output file will be like this. Other option to compile is to use tsconfig.json file. This file specifies the root project and required compiled options. When we run TSC with no any input files, the compiler will start searching tsconfig.json file in the current directory and counting up the current directory chain. When we run TSC with any input files, the property specified and in the tsconfig.json file are ignored. This file contains different properties, and we can use it to help us get our result. For example, compiler options, specified options for compilers. We can specify target ECMAScript on this slide to EX5. Remove comments option, remove comments. Source map indicates that we need to generate a map between our output file and compiled files. Out dir options sets the directory for compiled files. Out file options set the name for our compiled files, and watch options run compiler into the watch mode. These options can be omitted, and in this case will be used the default options. Files property this property is specified. Only those files will be included in compilation. Other may be included files from include property, and exclude property exclude files from compilation. Compile and save property indicate our IDE or code editor to compile all files upon saving. Extends property allow us to extend configuration our tsconfig.json file from another file, and reference properties allow us to split our TypeScript code into small pieces. So what's about types? Types allow JavaScript developers to use very productive development tools and practice like static code checking and refactoring. TypeScript supports all basic types that we have in JavaScript. It's a boolean, number, string, array, null and undefined, and object. Also, it supports a tuple type. It's a way of describe an array where the number of elements have a type but not the same. It's different types. Example we see on the slide. Additional types is a num. It's a more friendly way to take to give numeric values. It's more friendly way to give numeric values some keywords. By default, enum start numbering the value from 0, but we can manually change it and use our custom values. Also, there is any type. It uses when we can we should describe any values that we don't know. It may be any types, and this is not good practice, and we should avoid it as much as we can. The void type, it is a little opposite of the any type, the absence of any type at all. We can see this type and functions that don't return any value. The never type is a type of values that never occur. One of the core principles of TypeScript is that type of checking based on the shape that value have. Sometimes it's called duck typing. Is the objects that we pass to the functions match the requirement properties, then it's allowed. Not all property should be required. We can specify optional property using a question keyword, and also we can use read-only property. This is property that can be modifiable only when an object is created. TypeScript supports all the latest JavaScript features, and all information you can find in the official documentation. Thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions for me? I'm learning it second times. I learned in the previous stream, and I think it's my last try. I hope. What? I think I can do it. But not maybe rolling slots, maybe other studies, other courses. Thank you.
Okay, hi guys, hi everyone with who I take part in this crazy race called the Rolling Scope School. We've studied together for 3 months and I'm sure you are extremely tired. It's time to relax, nothing close to front end. I'll tell you about blockchain. Every day we all interact with one another, mostly in the internet. We chat, we buy some things online, we use services like bank. But how do we know who we trust online? Some technology can help you live in the world where no one can believe another. This technology is blockchain. Blockchain is some kind of decentralized ledger. It's numbers of blocks with information what contain cryptographic hash of previous transaction time step and transaction data. Now I try to explain you transaction cycle. On the first step, someone requests a transaction. On the next step, transaction broadcasted into peer-to-peer network. On the third step, verification, miner can verify the transactions. After that, transaction combined to a block. On the next step, this block added to excited blockchain. Happy end, transaction is complete. 3 main properties can help blockchain technology to be quite popular. First of them, it is decentralization. Next one, it is transparency. Third one, immutability. Katya, please help me. Decentralization in blockchain context means that if that blockchain doesn't have any control point, no one can control it. Transparency is the most interesting and misunderstanding characteristic of blockchain. Some people say that blockchain can give you privacy, but some people say that it's confident. What's happened? How we can explain it? Just see on my picture. All transactions on blockchain can be visible. Everyone can find all information about all transactions on special blockchain explorers in the internet. Let's imagine I'm Katya, send some cryptocurrency to another person. For example, who? For example, our schoolmates, Kani Knox. Why not? Look at my picture again. Here is my transaction. Please find it. I think it's impossible because you can see here just addresses and another information. No names, no surnames. If you want that no one can find exactly your transaction in blockchain, you just need to keep a secret your public key. Immutability. It is in blockchain context mean that if once something was written in blockchain, no one can change it. Okay, I can imagine that you've never been interested in this technology. Okay, it's normal. But I'm sure everyone heard about cryptocurrency. Yes or no? Let's game some short game. Last answer will be winner. What cryptocurrency do you know? Bitcoin. Okay, next one. Litecoin. Cool. Dashcoin. Maybe some other people want to take part in this game? Okay, please applaud Artyom. He is a winner. You can choose coffee, tea, candy, I think. Okay, of course, Bitcoin, it's the oldest cryptocurrency. It's first blockchain-based cryptocurrency. Now is the most valuable and most popular. Blockchain, like technology, can be quite useful in absolutely different sphere. We can use it, for example, for e-commerce, for healthcare, for insurance, for escrow, for digital rights, a lot of different sphere. Once Belarus decided to write its own history of blockchain. Decree 8 on the development of digital economy was written by Belarusian entrepreneur Viktor Prokopenya, by lawyer company Aleynikov and Partners, by some government guy, by some specialist of high technology park. And according to this decree, now our country is like paradise for crypto companies. It's one of the most comfortable place in the world for crypto activity. For this reason, maybe it's about some Belarusian crypto companies. Cryptocurrency stock exchange Currency.com was founded by Viktor Prokopenya. On this platform, everyone who has Bitcoin or blockchain or Ethereum, for example, can trade and earn money by assets of a world big company like Uber, for example, EPAM. But pay attention, it's not real assets, it's just tokens. Blockchain is quite popular into Belarusian startup community. I found information that 10% of all Belarusian startups on previous year did something with blockchain. Some guys developed open source crypto wallet. Some do world platform for scientists. Some do something for certification. Some develop some crypto games with cats, dogs, unicorns. It's quite interesting, I think. Okay. Technology changed our life. IT sphere changed our country. Who knows, maybe in future blockchain changed world. Maybe you can change the world. Just try. Thanks. Of course. Sorry?
Is there any name for the Belarusian cryptocurrency?
Thaler? I know about Thaler, but yes. Squorum, for example. I've never heard about it. I don't know. for this task. I don't know, maybe this video. Oh my God, it make me crazy. I wanted to die sometimes, to be honest. Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Check, check, check. Hello, my name is Fyodor, and today I'm going to tell you about Yagni. So, what's Yagni and where did it came from? Before we understand that, I would like to say a few words about extreme programming. Extreme programming is an agile software development methodology which is designed to improve software quality and responsiveness to changing customer requirements. So, extreme programming has 12 practices, which practically can be seen in the slide. There is no need to describe all of them right now, but I highly recommend you to check the information about extreme programming and its practices, at least on Wikipedia, because it's very interesting and simple. What we should do is to pay attention to one practice which is called simple design. Simple design means that developers should take simple is best approach to software design. Whenever a new piece of code is written, the author of this code should ask her or himself, is there a simpler way to create the same functionality? If the answer is yes, so you should choose the simplest one. Yagni. Yagni is a part of simple design practice, and it's a principle. It's a principle that claims that a developer should not add functionality until it is necessary. Yagni can be described as you ain't gonna need it. Also, we can say you aren't going to need it. So we underline that our potential feature, won't be useful for us in future. It's Ron Jefferson, the co-founder of Extreme Programming. He said, always implement things when you actually need them, never when you just foresee or predict that you need them. And a little example. It's very simple, but I think will be useful. For example, you're working on a small prototype of a web page to show to a client. Your manager gave you 4 hours to make it. The structure of this page is practically similar to our neutron mail task. So navigation in the header, some information about client's product in the center, simple slider, 2 buttons with links to App Store and Google Market to download the client's app, and contacts in the footer. So it took you for 2 hours to make it, and you have some extra time until your manager checks your result. So you decided to make your page prettier in order to make a better impression on your client. So you add some pseudo classes like hover on every button. You add some animation, you add dynamic slider, you add some media queries for responsiveness, you find some bugs, you fix some bugs. So it took you another 2 hours to implement additional functionality, so you finish your prototype, which is almost ready web page, and the situation is opposite to expectation and reality case. So you show your prototype to your manager, and your manager says, nice job. You are rather happy, and later you find out that that your manager just took a screenshot and put it in the presentation for your client. So you have nothing to do but sit and smile like, hi, the Payne Herald. It's a rather funny situation, but I think everyone in this room has or will have the same situation, but in with different conditions. So the main problem YAGNI solves is elimination of developers' desire to experiment, and to implement functions that are not needed now, but in the opinion of the developer, they can be needed or they can be useful, although they are not very often useful. So why do we need YAGNI? Because there are no free functions in development. So we can look from economic and technical points of view. If we consider economic side, so any unnecessary but actually implemented function is paid either by a client, that means the budget of the client includes all the features that are not needed, or by the executor from the profits of the project. Both options are wrong from business point of view. So the client must not pay for functions that are not needed, and developers should not spend their expensive paid time for on implementation of what is not required. So if we talk about technical costs, then every bonus feature can lead to some undesirable consequences. For example, wasting time that could be spent on adding and improving the required functionality. The next is new features must be debugged, documented, and maintained. The next is extra functionality can limit what can be done in the future. It means that your current functionality that you added can prevent or block the adding of useful functionality in the future. The software becomes more complex and sometimes overly complex, and if all the functionality is not documented, it may remain unknown for users and other developers. And snowball effect, it means that adding new functionality can lead to a new desire to add some more new functionality. So, if we jump again on 12 practices of extreme programming, we can see the design improvement. To design improvement. So design improvement means refactoring of the code, but but some people can say that refactoring is directly opposite to YAGNI. So does refactoring violate the YAGNI principle? What I can say, that refactoring, the principle, sorry, the fact is that refactoring takes time but does not add some new functionality. On the other hand, YAGNI principle claims that you should spend your time, you should design only current functionality, but not what we will need in future. So we can think that we have a contradiction there. The principle of YAGNI is not to make the system more complex than the client requires. It is a part of simple design practice. Refactoring is necessary to keep the system as simple as possible. It should be carried out immediately as soon as you find that you can simplify something. And at the same time, very few people can do as much as simple from the first time. So you will have to refactor your code. So we can say that refactoring and YAGNI are both enemies of complex systems, complex code, and they both look one way. There is one situation when you can ignore the YAGNI principle is when the implementation of new functionality that you want to add now, right now, you know that it will be obviously much more expensive in the future. So in such situation, you should speak with your manager and decide to add or not to add. So to summarize, in my opinion, YAGNI is very useful principle, and we should take into account this principle during software web development. So use it, don't make your life difficult, and be happy. Thanks for watching. Sometimes during my during preparing the tasks, I spend my time on adding some funny or some interesting for me functionality, but not for doing something really useful. I think in our school every experience is a good experience, and this is connected with our potential job when we really have our paid time and budgets and so on.
Sorry. If you can hear me, my name is Ekaterina, and this is my presentation. Over the course of a project, company makes 100 of decisions, and one of the first decision company makes, which project methodology to use. The Scrum project methodology. Jeff Sutherland created the Scrum process in 1993. He's taken this term Scrum by analogy the Scrum formation by rugby teams. Scrum is an iterative software development model used to manage complex software and product development. Fixed length iterations are called sprint and continue 1 or 2 weeks long. At the end of sprint, stakeholders and team members meet to plan next steps. Scrum follows a set of roles, responsibilities, and meetings that never change. Advantage of Scrum. The benefits of Scrum includes more transparency and product visibility. That means all team members know who is doing what, and this is help remove many confusion. Increased team accountability. That means the team collectively decides what work they can complete in each sprint, and they all work together and help each other. Easy to accommodate changes. That means, for example, if a team discovers new useful user stories, they can easily add that feature in next sprint. Increased cost saving. That means any mistakes can be corrected early on before they get too expensive to fix. And disadvantage of Scrum. It includes risk of scope creep. That means stakeholders may be asked to add new functionality in this project, but it can will more time. And team requires experience and commitments. That means everyone does everything, and it is required team members with technical experience. The wrong Scrum Master can ruin everything. That means the Scrum Master is not a project manager. If the Scrum Master try control the team, project will fall. And the next steps, if the initial goals are unclear, planning becomes difficult, and sprint can be more time. And next slide, roles in Scrum. You can see product owner. This person create and manage the backlog, provides recommendation, and motivates the team with a goal and vision. Scrum Master. Scrum Master helps planning and communicate with product owner, and Scrum Master maybe means like the coach for the team. And development team includes of 5 to 7 members, and they work together and help each other. Steps in the Scrum process includes product backlog. This is not list. This is not list of things to be completed, but it is a list of the most useful features for the project. And product owner and Scrum team need to prioritize the items on the product backlog. And next steps, this sprint planning. It includes the team when chooses which work they can complete it, and product owner present the most item, the top of item on the backlog. And grooming, it is important part because the team and product owner meets to make sure the backlog is ready for the next sprint, and team may remove user stories that aren't relevant. And daily Scrum meetings. It is 15 minutes stand up. It happens every day, and in these meetings, team and Scrum Master talk about what they will to do, and any issues that they have. And sprint review includes represent works, what they do, and this is only a live demonstration, but not a report or PowerPoint presentation. Okay, tools, artifacts, and methods in Scrum. During each sprint, the team will use visual artifacts. It's help visualize process and receive feedback. For example, Scrum board. This is table where you see to do, work in progress, and what team done. User stories includes type of users, what these users want, and why they want it. Burn down chart. This is chart visual progress teams work, and teams can see and teams can see story points, ideal days, team days, and other metrics. Large-scale Scrum help if your project is very big and you need more team members. Time boxing. Time boxing is a set period of time during which a team works and completes a goal. Icebox includes user stories, are not relevant, but these stories can be useful in next sprint, for example. How and when to work with Scrum. We can use Scrum process if your project have many change, and if your team wants more autonomy. If you want to add new features in your project, you can easily add this, and your project not ruin. That's all. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Alexander. Today I will speak about a recently added powerful tool called CSS Grid. Grid technology allows us to align and position elements without using floats and position properties, and supported by by all modern browsers. Let's start. To start using a grid, we need to have a grid container and grid items. Grid container is a parent element that contain grid items like children. To turn an HTML element into a grid container, we need to use display property and set to it grid value. If we need to make our grid container inline element, we need to use inline grid value. Grid container properties. By default, our grid container have only one column, which contain all items like equal size rows. To set into a grid container a certain amount of columns, we need to use grid template columns property and set to it certain amount of values size values. Each size indication will refer to one of the column. Grid rows works almost the same like grid template columns property, but it refers to rows and indicated their height. Grid template. We can combine these properties by using grid template property. Although we consider it grid template columns property first, in a grid template property we need to use grid template rows property first. Then goes a slash sign, and then goes grid template columns properties. Grid features. Grid allows us to use few new features that makes our work with grid easier. Let's start to consider them. Fraction. Fraction is a new relative size unit that works like a divider that divide all available space into a grid container. For example, our grid container have 1000 pixels wide. We have 10 fractions, and we need to divide all width for 10 fractions. So one of fractions will be 100 pixels. So first column will be 100 pixels wide, second column will 200 pixels wide, etc. Repeat. Sometimes we need to define many equal parts, so grid allows us to use repeat method that takes two values. First value is a number of parts amount, and second value each part size. Its second value also can take many values. For example, we have two value in second property, and first and third column will be 200 pixels wide, and second and fourth column will be 300 pixels wide. Min-max method. Min-max method allows us to set to the item minimal and maximal size. It takes two parameters respectively. So minimal size will be 200 pixels wide, and maximal parameter. Okay. Ekaterina, can you follow? Open this link in new window and show people how to work min-max method. You need to change this window size. Just okay. Width. Yes. Thank you very much. Let's. It's cool, yes? Thank you. Okay. Grid gap. Grid gap properties needs to specify a place between our grid items. For indicate a place between columns, we need to use grid column gap property, and for rows, we need to grid row gap property. Also, we can use grid gap property to combine both of these properties. In this case, first value will refer to grid row gap properties, and the second value will refer to grid column gap properties. In this case, we don't need a slash sign between them. If grid gap property have only one value, it refers to both of these properties. For example, if we have only 40 pixels without 20 pixels value, it refers to our grid column gap property 40 pixels and row gap property the same. Note that the grid gap properties don't send the space between container border and between grid items. It set the space only between items, like grid, like space between property in Flexbox. Grid items property. Grid items can occupy not exactly the one of cells. To define where our grid item will be located, we need to use grid start and grid end properties. Grid start property takes both of these properties takes numbers. Grid start property takes number for indicate where our grid item will start. Grid end properties takes number to indicate where before cell to indicate cell before our grid item will end. For example, grid column start property is 3. So our grid item will start from cell number 3 in grid column end property, value number 5. So our grid item ends before cell number 5. It not include. Exactly the same. Exactly the same happened with grid rows properties. In this case, grid item starts from row number 2 and it ends before row number 4. We can combine these properties by using grid column and grid row properties. In this case, first value will refer to start properties, and the second value refer to end properties. It divides by slash sign. Also, we can use span keyword that indicate how many cells our grid item will occupy. For example, if we indicate span 2, our grid item will start from cell number 3 and occupy 2 cells. First cell is 3 cell and occupy 2 cells. Okay. Grid area property. To combine all of these properties in one row, we need to use grid area property. It takes 4 values. First value is a grid row start property, then goes grid column start property. then goes grid row end property, and then goes grid column end property. All of these properties divided by slash sign. Although it's not so obvious like these properties, the shortest way to indicate these properties. Unfortunately, like I said, it's not so obvious and readable. But when we're accustomed to this approach, it will be the shortest way to define these properties. Okay, grid template. By the end, let's consider one of the advanced feature of the grid layout technology. It's grid template areas property that sets to grid container and help us to lay out our web page by indicator values that refers to each cell. For example, our grid container have 4 columns and 4 rows. We use variables header that occupy all of first row. Then goes a main container that occupy 3 columns and 2 rows, and a side container that occupy 1 column and 2 rows. Then goes footer container that occupy 4th row. For grid items, we just need to set one word. It's so simple and easy. This result of our manipulation. Is that it? Thank you for listening. Yes, yes. Yes, of course. Sorry. We did one by one with mentor, not for. Yes, yes, just one by one for mentor. No, it's my choice because it related to our current tasks, our current what we do now. It's very useful for us. Now we will implement Piskel task, Piskel clone. Why not? Why not? I say it.
Describe the process of how did you know about the browser support?
I read of it on W3C site web page. No, I didn't see it. No, I did. Yes, of course, but I need what all I need is W3C. Yes. Yeah. It's listen. You don't. You can't build something like that without using Flexbox, without using property, position properties, you know, position relative and absolute. Grid allows us to build something like that. Yes, yes.
Have you ever tried?
It's not so hard like it's view, you know, like it's see. Yes, yes. I can try to explain how it works. It's just a grid item takes the same properties that can useful with Flexbox. It takes grid justifier aligned, etc. And also it takes the Z index property for make out something like that. We can specify that index property to one value, and item number 5 will be coverage of first and second.
Okay, thank you.
One more question for you.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, if grid so powerful, why it doesn't used in projects everywhere?
I think first of all because it doesn't need it sometimes. In most cases, we need Flexbox. Okay.
Hello, I'm glad to see you. My name is Andrew. Topic of my presentation, Electron. What is it? Time 10 minutes. I have seen as a presentation, and now I understand that my presentation a little bit looks like lecture. However, it seems to me nothing wrong. Okay. Main content of my presentation. My presentation has introductory part. The second question introduced to Electron. This question separate into two sub-questions: short description, history of creation. The second question, main information. The third question, main advantages and disadvantages. And that question to separate into two sub-questions: advantages and disadvantages, and your questions and conclusion. Next, introductory part. In this part, I want to voice definition of electron and show you a little funny surprise. Okay, and what is electron? Electron is an open source library developed by GitHub for building cross-platforming desktop applications with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And now, surprise, funny kitten for you. I honestly believe that it attract your attention and cheer you up. Okay. Next. Main part of my presentation, introduction to Electron. Short description. Electron, as I said earlier, Electron is an open source library developed by GitHub for building cross-platform desktop applications with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Electron accomplish this combining Chromium and Node.js into a single runtime, and apps can be packed for Mac, Windows and Linux. In this feature, we can see that Electron is cross-platform library. Okay. History of creation. Electron began in 2013 as the framework of which Atom, GitHub's hackable text editor, would be built. The two were open sourced in the spring of 2014. It has since become a popular tool used by open source developers, startups and established companies. Below are milestones in Electron's history. April 2013, Atom Shells is started. May 2014, Atom Shells is open sourced. April 2015, Atom Shell is renamed Electron. May 2016, Electron release version 1 and 0.0. May 2016, Electron apps compatible with Mac App Store. August 2016, Windows Store support for Electron apps. Main and render process. If we want to know Electron, we be able to understand two types of process in Electron. Electron has two types of process. The main process and the render process. The process that runs package.json main scripts is called the main process. The script that runs in the main process can display excuse me. Don't remember what it mean. Okay, I know, but I don't remember. But creating web pages, and Electron app always has one main process, but never more. Since Electron uses Chromium for displaying web pages, Chromium's multi-process architecture is also used. Each web page that Electron runs in its own process, which is called the render process. In normal browsers, web pages usually run in sandboxes environment and are not allowed access to native resources. Electron users, however, have the power to use Node.js APIs and the web pages, allowing lower-level operating system interactions. Okay, in the scheme we can see two types of process in the bottom of the scheme. The main process, communicate with operating system of our computers, and main process can communicate with file managers. And in the app of my scheme, we can see two render process. That render process separate with each other. We can see it next. Differences between main process and renderer process. Okay, the main process creates web pages by creating browser window instance. Each browser window instance runs the web page in its own renderer process. When a browser window instance is destroyed, the corresponding renderer process is also terminated. The main process manages all web pages and the corresponding renderer process. We can see that in my scheme. Each renderer process is isolated and only query about the web page running in it. In web page scaling, native GUI relate APIs is not allowed because managing native GUI resources in web pages is very dangerous, and it's easy to leak resources. If you want to perform GUI operations in a web page, the render process of the web page must communicate with the main process to request that the main process perform those operations. Advantages. Electron has some advantages. The most famous advantage of Electron is web technology. We can work in useful and known technologies, CSS, JavaScript, and HTML. It's very useful because all front-end developer knows that technology. Open source, cross-platforming. I won't pay your attention to buy cross-platforming because it's a very useful advantage. We can package our applications in Mac, Windows, and Linux platform. It's very useful. And I want to say about develop environment and security. When we work in Electron, it means that we work in Node.js, and we can use npm Node.js anything code editor for a choice OS command line, and it's very useful because the technology, we know the technology, and all front-end developer can work with it. And about security, when we work with Electron, it's important to understand that Electron is not a web browser. Allows to build future-rich desktop application with familiar web technology, but a code was power. JavaScript can use your computer file system, and it's dangerous and not safe. When we work with Electron application, or when we make Electron application, we can understand that our application use our file manager, and we can work with known applications, only with known applications. Excuse me, but I want to say about one advantage. So when I made this this lecture for you, I read some documentation, and I can talk to you that there are rich documentation in Electron. It's great because when you work with unknown program product, it's very useful to have great documentation. Electron has great documentation. But Electron has some disadvantages. The main disadvantage, as I know, it's problem with memory of Electron application. Electron application use some computer resource and memory too. It's big disadvantages. for example, electron application like Skype. Thanks for attention and happy puppy for you. Excuse me? I learn for 3 months. We learn JavaScript. JavaScript, excuse me. Okay. Okay.
Thank you everyone. I'm sure it was great experience for us. And I hope I'll see you tomorrow next the same place at almost the same time. Bye.